The Maryland Construction Network is pleased to present the July 28, 2002 program from our Marketing and Digital Resource Group titled Managing Your Business's Cyber Risk. Welcome our group liaison and host Gina Ramsey, the president of Pink Dog Digital, where she helps clients build their business through their digital footprint. Maryland Construction Network, the home of Direct Connect networking events. Hi, everybody. It's Rob Bertazon from Maryland Construction Network. I'd like to welcome you to the July edition of our Marketing and Digital Resource Group. Our group is hosted by Gina Ramsey, president of Pink Dog Digital. Hi, Gina. And she has with us today Sean Rhudy, who's the president of Enhanced Computing Solutions, located in Sparks, Maryland. Hi, Sean. How are you?
Hi, I'm well. How are you?
All right. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to let Gina take over and we'll get started with the program. Go ahead, Gina.
Thanks, Rob. So I apologize in advance. To my right on my desk is one of my dogs because that's what dogs do. So if he sees someone out the window, he's going to interrupt the meeting, and I apologize in advance. It's just a thing. As Rob said, my name's Gina Ramsey. I'm the owner of Pink Dog Digital. We're a full-service digital agency. We provide services like website design, social media, search engine optimization, paid advertising campaigns, content creation, and we're working a lot these days with photographers and videographers trying to get some multimedia into people's feeds on their social channels. My guest here today is Sean Rhudy, who has been helping companies secure and manage data for 17 years, which he doesn't look like he's old enough to be in anything for 17 years, through his IT and security, cybersecurity firm, Enhanced Computing Solutions. For business owners and executives, keeping up with managing cybersecurity for their organization can be daunting, and Sean's going to discuss this. Before I start with talking to Sean, I just want to tell a story today. I had a client reach out to me about 6 o'clock this morning, and they had gotten onto their website and done, I haven't even figured out what, they had 700 orders come in for a single product. And within minutes of the order coming in, they were then disputing the order with Stripe to get their money back, but they never paid the money in the first place because the website stopped the order from going through. So I would love Sean to just, what's the end game there? They didn't get the product. They didn't get charged. They're trying to get a refund. How does that even work?
Yeah, so it's difficult to say for sure without saying what happened on the back end, but they could have tried to trick the system into refunding something, maybe sending a check. There was a major breach last week with basically a credit card collector that is associated with hundreds of websites out there. And that was breached and those websites were breached. It doesn't sound like that was the case here. But they were probably just trying to trick the system into.
Okay, cool. Yeah, it's like one day I got a package in the mail with comic books in it. I mean, this is before cyber. This was like old school fraud. And I'm thinking, what is the point of somebody sending me comic books? Like, I guess they're going to try and ask for a refund because they never got their comic books because they came to me instead. It's bizarre to me how creative some of these people are. And if they spent half as much time doing the right thing, they'd probably be millionaires already.
Yeah, really quick, just to show how clever they are. The TSA has master luggage keys. And they use those luggage keys to check your luggage as they're going through security and whatnot. The Wall Street Journal or New York Times posted a picture and did a story on that. In the background of the picture was those master keys, which is like 6 or 7 of them. A hacker was able to enhance that image and create a 3D version of each key and 3D print those keys. And now they can get into any piece of luggage. And now that 3D key is all over the internet and you can, print it off yourself if you have a 3D printer. mean, that's how clever they are. They're always watching.
That's amazing. Well, with that, why don't we start with the basics, block and tackle, because I know there's a lot of terminology that people, my mother called me the other day and asked me, why the hell is somebody phishing on her computer? And she meant FISHING. So what are some of the most common types of cyber attacks that you're seeing right now?
Sure. So the first one is probably the most obvious, which is ransomware. Ransomware has been increasing year over year. There's a 62% average increase year over year reported to the FBI. I have some statistics here because I think it's powerful. In 2017, $2.3 million was paid in ransom. In 2019, $7.5 billion was paid in ransom payments.
Oh my goodness.
That is hot. Say that again.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, that's an incredible statistic. And it costs companies an average of $8,000 per hour of downtime. And those are small businesses. That's not enterprise. So it's trending up. That's definitely the most relevant. The second would be business email compromise, which obviously is when an attacker gets into your email. What people don't realize is once they're in your email, they have access to think of all your attachments, think of spreadsheets and Word documents, think of passwords you sent people, think of passwords you've received from IT or coworkers, maybe communication with your HR department and all the social security numbers in a spreadsheet for your employees. So there's a lot of data in your mailbox to begin with, but then once they're in your mailbox, they can send email as you and send it to your coworkers to trick them into sending money to a fake checking account. They can trick them into clicking a link to install a virus. There's a lot they can do while they're in that mailbox, and they can cover their tracks. So they can create a rule very quickly to hide your response or the other person's response, so you don't know that they're communicating with your contacts. So it's very tricky. Those are definitely the two most relevant right now.
My husband's company just went through cyber training where they had a day-long training on what to do and what not to do. And immediately following the training, the company that did the training sent out an email that looked just like an internal email with a link in it. And I think Brian said 60% of the people that got the email clicked the link.
Oh, yeah.
And that the majority of the people that clicked the link were C-suite, upper management. It wasn't block and tackle, feet on the street. It was those guys.
Yep, which means they have more access to the systems and more access to sensitive data. So
Yep. It was amazing. So tell us why cyber attacks should keep us up at night. What's the impact to small business? We know about Citibank, we know about Baltimore City, but what about us?
Sure. So the reason it should keep you up at night is there's been a 300% increase in cyber crime since COVID started. Ransomware attacks nearly doubled in 2021. And in the first 6 months of 2021, almost $600 million was paid in ransomware from US businesses. And then in 2022, there's been so far 5.3 trillion intrusion attempts into networks. There's been almost 5.5 billion malware attacks and a little over 600 million ransomware attacks already this year. So everything is trending up. Also, today's hacker is not, most people think of a hacker as, some teenager in their parents' basement wearing a hoodie hacking away. That is not the case anymore. Some of these are businesses. There's so much money in this that, these hackers sometimes get benefits. They have PTO, they have dental and health benefits. Sometimes the people that work on the front end, answering phones and doing admin work, don't even know they work for a company that does that. Wow. So it's very organized. The point of me saying that is they're not just going after large businesses. Most attacks today start off automated. So every IP address in the world is hit on average 4,000 times per day. Now, not all of that is malicious. Some of that is Google, looking for things and things crawling the internet, and they're valid, and that's okay. But some of that is not. So 4,000 times a day, your IP address is getting hit. Once that automated part finds a vulnerability, it assigns a ticket, almost like a project, to an actual hacker. Now, at that point, they don't know, is this a one-person business or is this a multi-billion-dollar business? They don't know and they don't care at that point. They just know that there's a vulnerability and they can try to get into your network. And that's why small businesses are vulnerable. Of course, they want to get into, a Johns Hopkins or something because the payday is huge, but that's not how it starts off. If they get into a small business, they're still going to encrypt your data or steal your data, and they're still going to do their thing and move on. Sometimes it's ransomware and they're trying to get the ransom. Sometimes it's stealing the data and posting it for sale in the dark web. Sometimes it's just stealing passwords and posting it for sale in the dark web. But no matter if you're a large business or an SMB, they're still going to go after that.
Wow. Can you give us a layman's definition of dark web? Because I know that's a terminology that a term that confuses people.
Sure. So the dark web is the part of the internet that you can't get to unless you have a special browser. The Tor browser is the most common. It's a special browser. It was actually developed by the military, the US military. The point of it is once you go in that browser, it sends your internet traffic off of thousands of points all over the world, so it can't be tracked back to you. It actually can be tracked back to you, but it's much more difficult. And you have to use a browser like that to get to dark web websites. On the dark web, there are terrible things happening. There are a lot of drugs for sale, passwords for sale. I believe there are, I have a statistic here of how many credentials are on the dark web. I think it's 300 credentials for every man, woman, and child in the United States. Wow. On average, for sale on the dark web. We run dark web scans for companies, and every time there's most of their employees, including them, are on the dark web report, and they're usually shocked. But I tell them I'd be amazed if you weren't on this report, because I can tell you that almost every email address or person, at least in the U.S., has some credentials on the dark web. Hopefully, they're old credentials that you're not using anymore. But I would be shocked if they weren't on there.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
And it's terrifying.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So on average, what is the impact of a cyber attack to a business? I mean, is it $10,000? Is it $50,000? Is it they have to change all of their machines? I mean, I know my husband's company got hacked probably 5 years ago. Every laptop had to be switched out.
Yeah.
Every desktop had to be switched out. They were unable to use their emails for up to 6 months. It was craziness.
Yeah. Yeah. There's 6 key areas. There's your reputation, which a lot of people don't think about. Think of, I did a presentation last week in Chicago, similar to this one, for jewelry store owners. And imagine if they got hacked and their client's credit card data got stolen, or even it didn't get stolen. Maybe it just came out that they got hacked. Imagine, a consumer thinking about going to that store and swiping their credit card, knowing they just got a breach, or they just got breached. That will probably make that consumer think twice about going to that business. So there's the reputation. There's possible fines if you accept credit cards. There's PCI compliance, which could be $5,000 up to $100,000 fine for that. There's also state laws that say if you're breached, you have to notify the people whose information was breached. And if you don't, there's fines for that. There's possibly lawyers involved. If my business was breached, I would call my lawyer first and say, okay, I want to be careful what steps I take first. And, maybe not from a technical standpoint, but from a breach notification standpoint, I'd want to talk to my lawyer about what to do and when. Then if your customer's information or your employee's information is breached, you're required by law to notify them. So there's the cost of those notifications, whether that's labor or postcards or letters or whatever that method is. Then there's specialists to come in like myself that will come in and assess what happened, how they got in. Sometimes we're hired by the company. Sometimes we're hired by the attorney or the insurance company. And then there's finally the recovery, which is what you mostly think of when there's an impact of a cyber attack. And that's wiping the computers, restoring from backup, whatever the case may be. You add all that up, and that's a huge impact to a business. And then there's the downtime as well. You're down during this entire time. So there's a pretty staggering statistic. 60% of businesses that have a cyber attack go out of business within 6 months of that attack. And that is just staggering to me. The average cost of a data breach is $1.5 million. Usually that's paid by the insurance company. By the way, if you don't have cyber insurance, please go out and get it right away. But 40% of that average cost of a breach is from loss of business, not from actual costs directly related.
So we're talking a little bit about cyber insurance. I know that a lot of people get a policy and their agent answers the questions for them, or they don't know the answers to the questions that are on the policy and they answer yes when it's really no. Can you talk a little bit about coverage and, where they're going to quote unquote get you when you're answering one of those questions incorrectly, and you might get an attack that they're not going to cover?
Yeah, absolutely. So I recommend every business has cyber liability, definitely, but it shouldn't give you a false sense of security. Applications, we get asked almost on a daily basis to help fill out these applications. And, even as soon as 2 or 3 years ago, these applications were like, 1 page, and the first half of the page was business name, contact information, revenue, and the bottom half of the page were the IT questions. And now they're 3 to 5 pages. I mean, they ask you, not only do you have antivirus, do you have next-gen antivirus? What's the name of it? Is it deployed in workstations and servers? How do you allow remote access to your network? How do you allow it? Do you have two-factor authentication? What product of two-factor authentication do you use? They go very deep into these questions or into the tech now. And if you answer a question, and I'm not saying people would lie on the application, but maybe you check a box because you just thought you had it. Maybe you check a box because you're going to implement it in the next few weeks and you end up not implementing it. The insurance company, if you have a breach, the first thing they do is send in their own, it's called a red team. They send in their own team hired by them to find out what happened. And by the way, while they're doing that, your IT team is not allowed to touch the network and start restoring it. So that extends your downtime because you have to wait for that team to get done their investigation. If something that caused the breach, you said you had protections against that on your application, they will deny that claim. And we've been seeing that happen more and more. We're working with a law firm now in Maryland that had a breach, and now they can't find an insurance. They had cyber insurance. They canceled their policy after they paid it out, and now they can't find an insurance company to cover them. So it's great to have, but it should not be your only line of defense. You still want to make sure you have all these protections in place and that you're answering honestly on the insurance application.
Sean, does your company help companies like mine set up cyber policies for their team members?
What do you mean for the team members?
So, must have antivirus on your machine, must have, because a lot of businesses now are working in a W-2 1099 model where they can't control what's happening with some of their team members. So is there a guideline about, must have antivirus, must have blah, 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 must have blah, blah, blah?
Yeah, so my recommendation for that, and we have come across that more and more, especially since COVID, more and more organizations are moving to the remote work model. My recommendation is if those employees have access to your client's sensitive information, have policies and procedures in place that say, one of the most important ones is bring your own device policy. are you going to allow employees to use their own laptop to work and access your client's information? If it's yes, then you need to define what they must have for protections on that computer, and then an acceptable use policy to come along with that. So it says, hey, here's what you're allowed to do and not allowed to do with our data or on this computer, et cetera. So you want to make sure that's defined. If it's in the budget, and I know this is challenging, but if it's in the budget, I always recommend giving those employees a company-owned laptop that you can have all your antivirus software on, have your monitoring. You can control the password centrally through certain cloud techniques. It's a big ask because buying all your remote workers, a company laptop gets expensive, but that's the best way to make sure that the data is secure.
Well, and the other issue there is with 1099 employees, you can't provide them equipment because when you provide them equipment, they're a W-2.
Yeah.
So
that's true. Yeah. So if it's a remote worker and they're an employee, you can, but yeah, you're right. So that does get challenging. I would use least privilege then, which is, give them access only to what they need access to. If they need to view a file but not be able to edit it, get granular with those permissions so you can lock things down as much as possible. Because if a hacker gets into their computer, they have the same access that the user has access to, so for the same information. So then I would use least privilege and still make sure that you have policies and procedures in place to define what the expectation is there to protect the information.
Okay. So this is one I hear all the time. I'm on the cloud. I'm good.
Yep. So we hear that a lot with HIPAA compliance. There's a lot of cloud EHR companies out there, and they say we're in the cloud. All of our patient data is in the cloud. We don't have to worry about it. But the response, and also a lot of companies believe that if they're in the cloud, the responsibility to protect that data now lies on that cloud company that they're paying every month. That is absolutely not true. The cloud companies out there, their position on protecting the data is, hey, we give you passwords, we give you the options and the settings to set up to make this more secure, but the onus is on you to set that up and train your employees and make sure that data is secure. Also, hackers can send you a malicious email and you click the link and it installs a keylogger. Now you log into that cloud system, you type in your username, you type in the URL, the username, the password, the hacker can see that and then log in on their end. And now they have access to that cloud system. Also, they can send you a phishing email. If they find out you're on QuickBooks Online, they send you a phishing email that looks like it's, QuickBooks Online. Now they have access to it. If you click Save Password when you're logging into one of those online systems, it saves it in your Google Chrome. If they get into your computer, they can access those saved credentials and get into it. And then finally, if you're clicking print, imagine you're in a cloud system, maybe it's QuickBooks Online or whatever it is, and then maybe it's an HR platform. You're still exporting data. You're downloading spreadsheets with information. You're clicking print. When you click print, that data, those data packets are coming down from the internet onto your local computer, across your network, and to your printer. All that can be sniffed and can be read. So even though you're in the cloud, that data is still passing back and forth, and that data is still vulnerable, and that needs to be accounted for and made sure that that's still secure.
Okay, that's terrifying. So we talked about a lot of this moving to small businesses instead of these big, huge enterprise levels. A business like mine. Well, I'm probably not a great example because we've got website passwords and such, but what are these people getting out of these small businesses? Where's the risk factor?
Sure. So, like I said before, the attacks usually start off as automated. So that's number one. But we hear a lot, that, what does the hacker care about my client's data? I hear that we don't have social security numbers. We don't keep sensitive data. That may be true, but the hackers may not care about the data, but they know you care about that data. So even though your QuickBooks file for your company for the last, however many years you've been in business, or maybe your entire standard operating procedures or all the documents you've ever created to run your business, or all your old invoices, your QuickBooks data, all of that, that may not be important to the hacker, but they know it's valuable to you. So if they steal it or they hold it for ransom and they can't, as a business owner, you can no longer run your business. They know that and they take advantage of that. So I hear that all the time, but the hackers are very smart and they know when they're on your network, what data to search for and what data to take.
Okay. So what's the largest vulnerability on a company's network?
The people. 95% of breaches are caused by some form of human error. Whether it's clicking a malicious link or falling for a phishing email. The last one is misconfiguration. That's where, maybe your organization is deploying a new software. Maybe you try to do it yourself, or maybe you install QuickBooks yourself, and you accidentally open up a vulnerability for the network. And I found the statistic on the credentials on the dark web. There's 6.7 billion unique usernames and passwords for sale on the dark web today.
Wow.
So, yeah, that's incredible. So a lot of organizations miss fixing, or not fixing, but training. You're trying to get rid of the biggest vulnerability to their network, which is training the users on not clicking certain links, on identifying a phishing email, on notifying their direct supervisor if there's any kind of incident that looks fishy. There's training platforms out there to help with that.
All right. Well, you teed me up for the next one. What protections should we have in place at a minimum?
Yeah, so I went to a cybersecurity conference in Orlando a few weeks ago, and it was pretty fascinating. It was most of the presentations were done by ethical hackers, and the minimum that you should have in place nowadays has changed a lot. Years ago, it was, I have antivirus, I'm okay, and I have a spam filter in my email. The minimum requirements now to make your network fairly secure, which, by the way, it's never, it doesn't matter how much money you spend on IT, you are never 100% secure. The idea is, I always associate it with alarm systems. If a burglar comes up to your house and there's a barking dog in the window and a sign out front saying you have an alarm, and there's locks on the doors and all that stuff, and there's big floodlights shining on them, they're not going to break into that house. They're going to go next door who doesn't have all that, and they're going to break into that house. So although you're never 100%, in my mind, the idea is to put all those things in place so it makes it much more difficult for a hacker to get into your business. But at a minimum, basic IT policies, I don't mean, hundreds of pages of policies, big enterprises have that, but just an acceptable use policy, a one-pager that says, here's what my employees are allowed to do with their computers. BYOD policy that we just talked about, a backup and disaster recovery plan. So where is the critical data? How's it backed up? And how will I restore from it? That one's very important. Just a one-page incident response plan. If an employee reports something to me that, could be a security incident, there should be some sort of response plan in place. Who are we going to call? How are we going to document what happened? A termination policy. The pipeline. What was the Colonial Pipeline hack? That was caused by a user that left the company. They had VPN access, and somehow no one ever turned it off. And that's how that hack happened. And it cost them, I think, $5 or $10 million, just because when that employee left, either HR didn't tell IT or IT forgot to disable it. But a termination policy, will help with that process and make sure their access is terminated. And then just like an equipment disposal policy. So if you get rid of an old computer, make sure it's wiped. And a facility security plan, which again is a 1 or 2 pager, where you make sure your data, if it's physically in the office, is locked down and safe from threats. And then we have, things like next-gen antivirus, password protected screens, password expiration, password complexity, all that stuff turned on your server side. Dark web scans are very important. And I know this is a lot, but a lot of this stuff is fairly
great
simple.
Information.
Yeah, a lot of this stuff is fairly simple to implement. A patch management system. So I'm sure most of us have heard of the Baltimore City ransomware that happened. They actually got hit 3 years in a row, different departments, but the one in 2019 happened with the Department of Public Works. And the vulnerability that the hackers exploited to get in, a update was released 2 years prior that would have stopped that attack, but it was just never installed on the server.
Nice.
Yeah, so having a Windows Update patch management system in place so that someone and something is watching and making sure these updates are getting applied. Obviously, end user security awareness training. Like I said, 95% of users or breaches are caused by user error in some form. So making sure those users are trained. Obviously, everyone's heard of MFA. MFA is tricky because it is annoying. A lot of users don't like it. You can't just type in your password and quickly go. It is so important. With 5.7 billion passwords being on the dark web, all they need is that username and password and they're in. If you add MFA on top of that, then that password is now useless because now they don't have that code that's on your phone. That goes a long way. So it's really important to have that on email, any kind of remote access, or any cloud apps that has critical information on it. And then a good spam filter in your email, of course. There's something called a UTM firewall. It's a unified threat management firewall. It's a lot different than the firewall you get from Verizon or Comcast. It's a lot different from the ones you buy at Best Buy. It scans traffic as it comes through, and it can block by country. So you can block North Korea, South Korea, Russia, all those countries that are known for hacking. You can block all traffic from those countries. Again, doesn't stop the hacker because the hacker can get into another computer in another country and then hack in. But all these layers combined give you a great chance at stopping them. So yeah, I think those are the essentials. There's probably 10, 20 more, but I don't think we have time to talk about all of them today.
That's all right. And we're going to, as I said, you're going to make it. Hey, excuse me. Sorry. It's what happens. So Sean, can you talk a little bit about backups and their relevance to this whole process?
Sure. So obviously, if you get ransomware, you want to make sure you have good backups because you're going to be, there's no way to recover from ransomware unless you pay the ransom or you recover from a backup. Those are the only ways. The hackers have gotten smart and realized they will not get paid if you have a backup. So the first thing they do before they even deploy the ransomware is they pivot throughout your network. It's called lateral movement. And they try to find your backups and destroy them. Because then they can deploy the ransomware. They know you have no other choice if you want your data back, but to pay them. So not only having backups, but watching them, making sure they're actually working. I can't tell you how many times we've gone in to do an assessment. The potential client even has an IT company that's supposed to be monitoring things, and the backups haven't worked for 6 months. We see that over and over and over again. The monitoring just isn't working properly. And then, a lot of the less expensive backup options sit on your network. So if I'm a hacker, I can see the backup, I click delete, I encrypt it, whatever, I make them go away, and now I've got you. You have to pay the ransom. So thinking about that and making sure those backups are separated from the network so they can't be accessed is very, very important.
So if what you just said is what I'm hearing, something like Carbonite or Dr. Backup or whatever, they're not foolproof.
They're not foolproof. Actually, a cloud backup like that is great to have. Carbonite was a home product that was sort of made into small business. The caveat with that, and that is separated from the network. The caveat with that is if you've ever had to restore all of your information from Carbonite, I mean, it can take weeks. It's very slow. And it's still vulnerable. Someone could hack into your Carbonite cloud system, delete the backups, and then attack you. So it is separated from the network. So it's good in that standpoint. We always recommend doing local backups separated from the regular network and cloud backups. If you're that way, number one, you have two. So if they get to one backup, you have the second one. Also, if you ever have to restore from backup, restoring locally, I mean, depending on how much data you have and how fast your network is, you can restore a local backup very quickly. A cloud backup, you've got to pull all that data down from the cloud. It can take a very, very long time.
Okay. So, there's two ways to go with this. There's the DIY, and everybody wants to save money, or hiring a professional to do this. Mm-hmm. If a small business is looking to hire a professional to do this, what are they looking at roughly in terms of monthly or annual fees?
Yeah, so that's a tough question to answer because there's so many options. I think a lot of what I talk about sounds unaffordable and very expensive. And I guess depending on who you're talking to, it may be, but I think it surprises people how much these services have come down in price. For example, a unified threat management firewall, it's a very advanced device. You could put one of those on your network, and this is probably one of the more expensive pieces of hardware we sell to a small business. And you're talking with installation, probably around $1,300. And that's probably one of the more expensive things that we sell from a hardware standpoint. A lot of these settings, password lockout settings, all of that kind of stuff. I mean, it's an hour of our time. It's 2 hours of our time just assessing things and changing settings. So again, not very expensive. I recommend every small business have an agreement, a monthly agreement with an MSP, that's a managed service provider. Because with that agreement, you get the monitoring of the backups. You get, hopefully they have a security expert on their staff and can consult with that and give you recommendations. They can monitor your backups and make sure they're working. Every MSP is different. The whole MSP world is moving to a per computer pricing model. We still deal with a lot of very small businesses, and that just isn't affordable for small business. So we still have a block hours. So for a few $100s a month, you can get a few hours of support with us. You can get monitoring of your backups, monitoring of your updates. So $400 or $500 a month for a small business is not inexpensive, that's for sure. But considering what's at risk versus what you're getting, I think it's a no-brainer.
Yep, I would agree. Robert, you've been very quiet. Do you have any questions so far for Sean?
Well, Gina, I'm just sitting here taking it all in. And of course, face it, my business is online. So, this is all fascinating to listen to and to get, Sean, I guess one of the first things, and I'm not the only person that does this, but I use a program, a password manager to do it. I've got, first off, let's talk about that. Using a password manager, once I get it set up, obviously I'm not typing in those, using a keystroke to put those in. Is that a good idea for logging in to your websites, using something like that so you don't have to use keystrokes to do it?
Yeah, we love password managers. We think they're a great idea. Of course, you want to make sure most password managers nowadays they force you to do 2FA or make a really long password. Obviously, with that having all of your passwords in it, you want to make sure it's not a 6-character password. You want to make sure you have quite a long password and 2-factor authentication on that. But no, we're big fans of password managers because nowadays there's password. I mean, every user has 20, 30 passwords if you really think about it. So instead of them writing them down, which is less safe, keeping them in a password manager is a great idea.
Yeah, and when you talk or 20 or 30, I mean, geez, just because of the nature of my work and all of the different sites that I go to and that I have accounts on and all that, I probably have, I think I have close to 400 logins in my password manager. You know, I listened to you talk about that. How often should I go through and change those passwords? And, you know, is it worth the time to go through all those different sites and change the password?
Yeah, I mean, that's where 2FA comes in. The industry is the IT industry is sort of split on this. Half of us will tell you change them every 60 days or so at least, or maybe 90 days. The other half will say by changing them, you're making it more likely that a hacker will see that you changed it and intercept that password, whether it's from IT, whether it's a password reset email from wherever you're actually resetting it. I am on the side of resetting it at least every 90 days because, with that many credentials being for sale on the dark web, you never want to keep a password for too long. Now, if you have multi-factor authentication on a lot of these accounts, especially the critical ones, if someone gets your password, it's not as big of a deal. But again, multi-factor authentication can be hacked. It's much more difficult than getting a password, but it's still not foolproof. So because of that, I am on the side of resetting passwords at least every 90 days.
Well, that's great. There are some of those that I guess I really do need to go back and change then, because some of them have been there for quite some time. One of the other things that I do try and take advantage of in that is that I change the amount of characters that I use. So it's not like every time I go to a website, I use 12 characters or 16 characters. And if I do change one, I'll usually change the number up.
Yeah, you're doing better than most because, I forget the percentage, but most password resets, the person uses something, and then maybe a special character and then 2020, and then they change it to 2021. So if I have a password from a few years ago, I can probably, after a few attempts, guess their new password. So it's important to mix it up, like you said, use different characters, different numbers or different quantity of characters, and mix it up each time and not just use the same password with different numbers at the end. And I can, if you want to reach out to me or anyone within the Maryland Construction Network, if they want a free dark web report, I just need their email address and I can send them a free dark web report. It will show you, it crawls a lot of the most common password sites, and it will give you your email address and whether the password is there, and it'll actually give you the last couple characters of the password, so you know which one is compromised and on the dark web. So if anyone wants that, just let me know.
Well, Sean, that's very nice of you to do that and make that offer, and I hope everybody takes advantage of that. I think I'm going to do it. Sean, past that, before we get finished, people have been listening and watching, so why don't you quickly give everybody your contact information, how they can get a hold of you if they want to talk to you more about this?
Sure. So email address is Sean, SEAN, at BaltimoreITsupport.com. And phone number for our office is 443-216-2276. You can reach me either way.
Great. And Gina, I'm going to turn it back over to you then. If you have any last minute questions to ask, or let you sort of wrap up the program if you don't.
Yep. No, I have one last question, and I think it's an important one. Sean, can you walk the audience through what an engagement with you would look like?
Sure. So once we get a signed agreement in place, we have an official 30-day onboarding period. We've had unique situations that require that to be shorter, but in most cases, it's a 30-day process. If there's a previous IT company, we will send them a packet that asks for all the information that we need. We will test our access to everything, make sure we have access and administrative access to everything that we need. We document the network so that when you call us for support, our staff can go to that documentation platform They know what software you use. They have passwords to get into what they need to get into. They have notes on how to repair some of your more commonly used software. So there's a documentation period within that. We also ensure whatever services you have with your current provider or on your own are transferred one-to-one, and you're not losing anything by coming on with us. And then finally, there's installing our software. We install a little agent that allows us to help you remotely, but also allows for all the monitoring to take place. And then finally, there's a cutover date. So as of, say, this Monday, we're going to start servicing the account. You get a welcome email that tells you how to submit tickets, email, phone call, or we have a ticket portal where you can submit tickets that way and keep track of them. And that's the final step. It's a fairly painless procedure.
Great. Well, Sean, I appreciate you coming on board today. Robert will be sending the recording to me, to you, so you can use it in your social channels and on your YouTube channel. We'll be doing the same thing to promote. We will be back here next month at Maryland Construction Network. I believe our subject next month is online reputation management and things like review sites and all the things that frighten the hell out of people out there about their digital footprint. So I'm hoping to have a guest. It may just be my boring self, but I'm hoping to have a guest for that one as well. And if anyone has any questions for Sean, I highly encourage you to reach out to him or reach out to me if I can make the connection for you both.
Great. And thank you for the invitation.
My pleasure.
And Gina, thank you very much, as always, for being our host for the Marketing and Digital Resource Program. It is fascinating information that you bring forward. And if anybody is not doing so, make sure you follow Gina on Facebook, LinkedIn, follow Pink Dog Digital, because she has great information she puts out there, but subscribe to her feeds as well. You'll get a weekly email or so with hints and ideas. And everybody, thanks so much for joining us today. I hope you enjoyed the program. Please take advantage of Sean's offer and always look to Gina for help with your marketing and digital footprint. So thanks so much, everybody. Have a wonderful day.
Thanks, everyone. Take care.
Thank you, Gina. And thank you for viewing this edition of Maryland Construction Network's Marketing and Digital Resource Group. You can reach our host, Gina Ramsey, the president of Pink Dog Digital, at 443-696-3305. Don't forget to subscribe to MCN's YouTube channel below and sign up to receive emails with important information and event notifications from MCN at our website, www.mdconstructionnet.net. Thank you and have a good day.